So the question I get asked time and time again by small business owners is, how do I qualify for an SBA loan? You would think it's some big secret because no one seems to know the answer. Yeah, banks are happy to take your application and then you're waiting weeks and weeks, sometimes months, and they end up declining you, and all you get in the mail is some letter that outlines some vague reason of why they can't approve your loan. I prefer to educate, so I'm going to peel back the curtain and let you guys behind the scenes so you understand what SBA underwriting is all about. SBA underwriting is the part of the process where the lender reviews all the financials and asks you a bunch of questions so they can totally understand your business and understand the project at hand. Once they've done that, they put together a credit memo and they review it with an approver or a credit committee, and they make a final determination as to whether or not they're going to approve your loan. And then if it's a yes, they issue a commitment letter, you're on your way to closing. If it's no, then you're declined and you've hit the end of the road with this lender. Doesn't necessarily mean you're not eligible for an SBA loan, just might mean that the loan request is a little bit outside of their risk tolerance. I will say this though, an entrepreneur that comes to a lender more prepared will have a greater chance of achieving their goal of accessing that SBA capital. So I'm going to tell you exactly what it is SBA underwriters look for so you can better prepare. In a nutshell, they're looking for strengths and weaknesses, and they're trying to determine if the strengths outweigh the weaknesses. And for the most part, they're focusing in these 5 key areas. One is cash flow. Cash flow is what repays the loan. And generally, they're looking at the last 3 full years via tax returns as well as the interim year with financial statements. And the lender is going to want to determine if there is sufficient cash flow to support the repayment of the loan. And generally, they want to see that in the last 1 to 2 full years. And if you're buying a business, this is focused on the seller's business tax returns. If you're an existing business applying for a loan, then the underwriter is looking at your historical tax returns. Now, once you've determined that there's enough cash flow to support the repayment of the loan, the next area they're going to focus on is collateral. Now, if you're buying a building or purchasing equipment, that's hard collateral. But if it's a partner buyout or a business acquisition, there may not be a whole lot of collateral there. So what the SBA tells the lender to do is to use all available collateral to secure the loan as best as possible. So this might require the lender to go look outside of the business for collateral. This might be equity in your primary residence or a rental property or other business collateral. And once the lender has taken all available collateral, they can stop and assess what their unsecured risk exposure is. And if there's a lot of unsecured loan, that's a weakness. But that doesn't mean you don't get the loan. It just means there has to be enough strength to outweigh this weakness. The third thing they're looking at is experience. Now, if you have direct industry experience, that's going to be viewed as a big strength here. Though, if you're buying a business, you may not have direct industry experience. Same goes for if you're investing in a franchise business. Underwriters will look at translatable experience or management experience, but that's going to be viewed sort of as a weakness. The fourth area they're going to look at is personal character. This is where they look at your background and try to figure out if there's any glaring personal character issues. Personal credit is usually what we're talking about here, though. If there's something that was in your past that is criminal in nature, they're going to ask you about that too. And with regards to the personal credit, it's not focused so much on the score as it is what's going on in there. Was there a short sale? Was there a foreclosure, bankruptcy, that sort of thing? And if that incident was isolated and there's a reasonable story behind it, then you can overcome that a lot of the times. But again, likely will be viewed as a weakness, and we'd be looking for strengths to outweigh that weakness. The final area that they're gonna focus on is equity or cash. And if you're buying a business or starting up a business, chances are there's an equity injection requirement. And they're gonna wanna make sure you have enough cash to put down that they can verify. And also, after closing, they wanna make sure you've got enough cash in the bank for a rainy day, some reserves. And if you have an existing business where you've been building up equity in the balance sheet for years and years and years, then that's going to be looked at as a huge plus, and you can use that equity in the business as your equity into the deal, meaning you might not need to put in additional cash if you're in that situation where you've owned your business for a lot of years and you've built up equity. So either way, they want to make sure you have either sufficient equity injection or sufficient equity in the balance sheet. That's an SBA requirement. And perhaps the most important part of this is the story. The story is what connects what they're looking at on their computer screens to what you're doing in the business. My advice is to know your financials so that you can connect what you're doing every day to drive your business forward on the factory floor or in the medical office or at the hotel, and connect it to the financials to tell that story and get the underwriter on board with your loan request.